Welcome to Landscape Photo Editing Sessions. I'm Raiatea Arcuri. In this episode, I'm going to be editing a waterfall photo. I'm also going to let you follow along by allowing you to download the raw file in the description below, and that can only be used for following along. So what I want to do to this photo is I want to warm it up, increase the contrast, also boost up the shadows, and increase the color. So I'm going to start off by adjusting the white balance, and I'm going to make the temperature to around 5300. And these highlights in the waterfall are a bit too bright over here. So I'm going to take those down maybe to around -40. I'm also going to boost up the shadows. And then also the blacks. And finally the vibrance, I'm just going to increase that maybe to around 20. And then I'm going to make sure remove chromatic aberration is checked. And finally this is ready to edit in Photoshop. The first thing I want to do is get rid of these lens flares over here. So there's a few of them around the waterfall. So I'm going to create a new layer. I'm just going to call it clone. And then I'm going to go to my spot healing brush. And then I'm going to make sure the hardness is at 50%. And then I'm just going to start cloning out these areas which need cloning. So I'm just going to zoom in here just to get a better, more detail. So there's a couple in the waterfall too. So over here, there's one over here and over here. And one more thing, I want to get rid of this stick over here because it's a little bit distracting. Alright, so I think that's all the spots. I'm just going to go over that one again. And over here too. Okay. So that looks pretty good now. The next thing I want to do is reduce the brightness of these rocks over here and also increase the contrast of the waterfall a little bit. So I'm going to create luminosity mask, and I'm going to put the action to this in the description below. So the luminosity mask will create channels based on the brightness values of the image. So if I go to my channels, and I'm going to go select midtones 2, and I'm going to press Control and click on the thumbnail, and this will select midtones 2. And then I'm going to go to my adjustments and create a curve adjustment layer, and the midtones 2 will be applied to the mask. So the midtones is only is gonna filter out just the areas between the highlights and the shadows. So you notice here the brightest part of the waterfall, it's dark, and the darkest part of the shadows are dark too. So for the curve adjustment, I'm going to go to my targeted adjustment tool. I'm going to go to this area of the rock. Actually, I'm just going to use this over here, and I'm just going to bring it down to around there to a level that I like. And then I'm going to go to the bright area of the waterfall and just bring that up. So this will increase the contrast of the waterfall and also reduce the brightness of these rocks. And on the left side of the image, I don't really like the effect of this adjustment on the left side, so I'm just going to select the layer mask. I'm going to go to my brush tool, making sure I have the black color and hardness at 0. So I'm just going to press Alt and click on the layer mask thumbnail, and that'll show me the preview. Make sure my opacity is at 100, and then I can brush out this left side of the image. Alright, so that's looking good. Next thing I want to do is increase the contrast of this left side. So this waterfall is a little bit dim, so I'm just going to go to my target adjustment, select the highlight, and then bring that up a little bit. And then I'm going to go to the dark part and bring that down a little bit. Alright, that looks pretty good, and I don't want it to affect the right side of the image, so I'm going to go to my brush tool, same settings, and I'm just going to brush the right side out. So I'm going to go to my thumbnail and making sure my preview that there's no white spots in the layer mask on the right side. Alright, the next thing I want to do is accentuate some of these highlights over here. So there's the sun shining onto the waterfall from the left side, and there's also it's creating some natural sun rays with the water over here, and I want to bring that out a bit more. So I'm going to use dodging and burning to do that. So to create the dodge and burn layer, I'm just going to create a new layer. I'm just going to name them dodge and burn. And then I'm going to change the blending mode to soft light. So to create the dodge and burn, so dodging will be use a white brush and burning will be a black brush. So I'm going to select my brush. I'm going to bring down the opacity to 10%. I'm going to select a black brush and size it down. So I'm going to brush in the dark areas. And you can already see the difference, so it's a lot more obvious, the sunlight. I'm also gonna reduce some of the brightness in the rocks over here around the edges, and just a little bit in this area too. Alright, so now I'm gonna switch colors, go to my white brush, and brighten up some of the bright areas. I'm also going to go to this waterfall here and do the same thing. Alright, so now if I toggle the visibility, it's a lot better. So you can see more details in the waterfall, and some of this area it's less bright, so less distracting. Alright, next thing I want to do is adjust the color of the image, so I'm going to add a curve adjustment layer. I'm going to change the blending mode to color, and then I'm going to go to my channels over here. I'm going to select the blue channel. So I want to add more blue to the dark areas of the photo and take away blue in the bright areas of the photo. So to do that, I'm going to go to my point over here. I'm going to click on it and bring it up just a little bit. So you can see it's bringing more blue in the shadows area. And then I'm going to go to the top point and bring that down. So that's taking away the blue areas in the photo. I'm also noticing it's just a little bit has a reddish tint in the shadows too. So I'm going to go to my red channel and go to my lower point and bring that the other way. So this will take away red in the shadows. So you can see a big adjustment in color, and I'm not really liking the effect of this on the rocks. So I'm gonna use a black brush. I'm gonna bring the opacity back up to 100%. Making sure I'm selected on the layer mask and the black brush. So I'm gonna brush out the rock areas. Alright, you can see now those areas aren't being affected. I'm also going to go to my properties of the layer mask and bring down the density just a little bit. So that will bring in just a little bit of color back into the areas. So just to balance it out just a little bit. I'm also going to decrease the opacity of this to around 70%. So just so that the effect isn't as strong. The next thing I want to do is add a glow effect, and this will add a really nice kind of a blurry effect to the highlights and shadows, so it'll bleed out some of these contrasty areas and it'll brighten up some of the sunlight hitting the water over here. So to do that, I'm going to create a stamp of everything visible. So the shortcut for that is Control, Shift, Alt, and E. So that will create a copy of everything. And then I'm going to apply a Gaussian blur to this layer. So I'm going to open up Gaussian blur, and then I'm going to set the radius to 20. And then I'm going to change the opacity of this layer to 20%. So already you can see the effect of this. So it blurred out the areas and it's adding a little bit back in. So the 20% opacity, and you can see it bleeded out some of the contrasty areas in the rock over here and the waterfall. So to add the glow effect, I'm going to create a curve adjustment layer and create a clipping mask just to layer 1. So I can do that by going in between here and holding down the Alt button and clicking, and that'll create a clipping mask. Alright, so next thing I want to do is add a little bit to the highlights on this curve adjustment and then bring it down for the shadows. So this created that glowing effect, and it just adds a little bit of I just really like this effect, I guess. Alright, finally, I think I'm going to add a light vignette to the image. So I'm just going to add a curve adjustment. I'm going to invert it because I want to manually brush in the vignette. So I'm just going to bring that down. I'm going to use my brush tool on white. And then I'm just going to bring up the opacity to around 60%, making sure the hardness is at 0%. And I'm just going to add it into the edges. And then just this whole side over here. And then I'm just going to reduce the opacity of that so that the effect is less strong. Alright, so that looks pretty good, and that's about it. So you can see from the original Lightroom edit, that's a big difference. So we removed the spots, and then we added more contrast to the right side of the image, more contrast to the left side, and then dodged and burned to add more details to the sunlit areas of the waterfall. And then adjusted the color to add more blue in the shadows and take away the blues in the highlights. Added the blurry effect and then the glow. And finally just the light vignette. Alright, if you found this useful, please give it a like and comment below if you have any questions or comments. And thanks for watching.